When you have your own milk cow, you have a plentiful supply of fresh milk daily. While this is a wonderful source of protein and calcium on the homestead, sometimes it can be a bit tricky to figure out what to do with all of it. Our big Jersey cow, Pauline, is 4 years old and calved in December 2025 to her third calf, but her first with us. During the time we've had her and up until she dried off prior to giving birth, she'd been steadily giving us around 3 to 4 gallons daily with once a day milking. That is a ton of milk for two people, so one of the ways we have put her milk to good use is to make mozzarella cheese. Mozzarella cheese is a soft cheese and it's not aged, so it's very easy to make. I have read that it's best to use fresh raw milk to make cheese if you can get it. However, I also know that raw milk is not always available in every state. You may need to check with your local laws as you might be able to buy it from your local grocer, or you might have to buy it direct from the farm. However, in some cases, you might even have to drive to another state that allows the purchase of raw milk. If you absolutely cannot get raw milk, you can try using the pasteurized milk that you can purchase at the grocery store. I'm just not sure how the results will turn out because I've never done that. This recipe can work for 1 to 4 gallons of milk, and in this batch, I'm just making 1 gallon. I will leave a comment below with the full list of ingredients and instructions. So, the first step is to dissolve the citric acid in 1/2 cup of water, as you can see me doing here. You can get citric acid online, which is where I got mine from Amazon, but you can also get it from cheese stores either online or if you have one available nearby. Now, as you can see, I'm shaking up the milk jars because these have been in the fridge for a period of time, and so the cream has settled to the top. And I just don't like it splashing everywhere when I dump it in, so I try to shake it up as best as I can before I dump it into the pot. Then I just scoop out the remaining bits, and that way I get all that luscious cream into the cheese itself. I prefer to use a heavy cast iron coated Dutch oven if possible because it retains its heat while the milk rests. But with larger batches of milk, I will just use an aluminum or steel stock pot. I don't use the non-coated cast iron, and the reason is because I'm worried that citric acid would degrade the bottom of the pot over time, and I would just rather it not do that. Once you have all of the milk in the pot, you're going to want to take your dissolved citric acid in the water, mix it up, and then just go ahead and pour it into the milk in the pot. The next step is to just let your milk heat up on medium to low heat until it hits 100 degrees Fahrenheit. This can take a little bit. You will want to stir occasionally in an up and down motion and not in a circular motion. You do this because you don't want the milk to move around a whole lot because it doesn't make a good cheese that way. You're definitely going to want to have a good thermometer on hand just to help keep you on temp. This one I think I got in Amazon, and I believe it's technically a candy thermometer. Now it's just a waiting game while you wait for your milk to hit temp. But while you're waiting, you can go ahead and prepare your rennet. To do that, you're actually just going to mix about a teaspoon of water in with your rennet. And your rennet is going to need to be kind of diluted by a half teaspoon per gallon of milk. So in this case, I only used 1 gallon of milk, so I only need a half teaspoon of rennet. But you'd need to add to that the more milk that you use. One of the things you might be noticing while I'm working on this cheese is that I'm actually in my pajamas, and that tends to be the case most of the time. We're usually pretty busy during the day, and cheese making tends to happen pretty late at night. In this case, I think it was close to 11 p.m. when I was working on the cheese. Once you've hit that magical number of 100 degrees Fahrenheit, you are going to want to go ahead and give it another little stir and then turn the heat off completely. Once you've taken the milk off the heat, you're going to go ahead and add that diluted rennet into your cheese. Go ahead and give it another stir and an up and down motion, making sure it's all incorporated together. Now it's time to let the cheese rest. So we're going to go ahead and remove our thermometer and place the lid on top of the Dutch oven. And now we wait. I usually go ahead and set a timer, which is what I'm doing on my phone right now. But you're going to want to let it sit there for about 15 minutes. Once that 15 minutes is up, you can always check to see if you get a clean break in your cheese, which basically just means that the top is kind of firm. In my case, I can see that it's ready to go, so I'm just going ahead and cutting the cheese into small squares. They say that you should do them in about 1-inch squares or 1-inch cubes. I'm probably not that exact. I just do the best that I can. Once you're satisfied with your squares, you're actually going to go ahead and cover it and let it sit for another 5 minutes. At this point, we're going to go ahead and stir our curds. This just helps breaks it up a little bit more so that way it releases the whey and makes it easier for us to strain shortly. When ready to strain, I use a bowl so I can catch the whey with a colander fitting inside of it and then cheesecloth on top of that. If you're not trying to catch the whey, you don't need to use the bowl. You could just use the colander with the cheesecloth on top. If you do it that way, you would obviously pour it into your sink instead of what I'm doing right now and into the bowl. I keep the whey so that way I can use it to actually make some chicken feed, which I might do a video on later. Now it's time to go ahead and strain the cheese and the whey. To do this, in this case, I just picked up the cheesecloth and kind of moved the cheese around ever so gently to try and get some of that whey out. Now, I could have probably strained this a little bit more, but I really wasn't too concerned about it because like to go ahead and use the way to finish making the cheese. So in this case, I just went on ahead and poured the cheese back into the pot because we need to heat it up so we can start to make cheese balls. As a side note, you can reuse your cheesecloth. You can just wash it and then reuse it for the next time that you make cheese. So I'm removing the colander so it can also be washed. And then I'm actually going to add some of the whey back into the pot, just enough to kind of cover the cheese while we heat it up. We're setting the heat to medium low. We don't want it to get very hot, but we do want the cheese to kind of start melding together so we can form it into balls. In the meantime, I've got a glass dish of cold water nearby because once we have the balls formed, we're going to put them in that cold water because it helps firm the cheese up. I also have some salt nearby because I'm going to salt the cheese as I start my stretches. I'm checking the cheese periodically to see if it's ready to stretch, and in this case, it's not quite forming the way that I want, so I'm letting it heat up a little bit further. Eventually, the cheese heats up enough that it's stretchable. Most people tend to kind of hold the cheese up in the air and let it fall back down into the pot. That never has really worked for me, so I just start pulling it with my hands, and that seems to work better. And then I put some on my cutting board and then salt it and then continue to stretch the cheese. You really only want to stretch each ball a couple of times. If you overstretch it, it gets kind of grainy and it's just not a very good cheese at that point. If my cheese ball seems a little bit too stiff, I will go ahead and place it back into the hot water so it tends to melt down and get a little bit more malleable. Once I can seem to be able to form it into a ball, I just sort of push from the bottom of the cheese and push up with my hands until I can kind of squeeze it into a ball. And then I press the bottom of it up into a neat little ball and just squish it together and then place it into the cold water. Continue to do this until all of the cheese has been formed into balls. I tend to make smaller balls just because I find them easier to deal with and to make things with later, but you could certainly make larger ones if you wanted to. I will caution you that this is a very hot process. My hands were very warm, almost to the point of burning while I was doing this. If you have very sensitive hands, I would suggest that you wear gloves while you do this. I've been doing it for a while and it doesn't bother me too much, but I'm also very cautious when I'm pulling the cheese out of the pot so I don't burn myself. Once I seem to have all of the cheese out, I'll go ahead and dump the rest of the whey out. If I'm saving it, I'll do that. And then if there's any cheese hiding, I'll go ahead and make that into a ball as well. Eat it immediately, or you can store it for a few days. We tend to cut it up and use it on pizzas, or sometimes we'll make a caprese salad, or, sometimes we'll just eat it with toast. It really just depends. In this case, I am cutting it up in preparation for our Friday pizza night. If you haven't seen that video, you should check it out next. And there you go, fresh mozzarella for a fresh homemade pizza. Thanks for watching our Root Cellar Homestead video. I hope you have a great rest of your day.